Welcome back, Sebastian here. So time for my review of the sprint shootout, sprint qualifying for the 2023 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. So if you're like me and you turned on your TV and you see that there's a 10-minute practice session going on, you were probably very confused, just like I was. So that's probably the big talking point that overshadows everything else from this session. So I'm going to start with that. So of course we had a 10-minute practice session when the sprint shootout was supposed to start, because Pirelli found, and this is in quotes, separation of the sidewall between the topping compound and the carcass cords on many of the tires that were checked. And I believe that was from either qualifying or FP1 yesterday. And basically this was due to high frequency interference between the tires, the tire sidewall and the 50 millimeter pyramid curbs that were used to try to hinder the drivers from going too far over track limits. And basically what's happened is the track has brought in these new curbs. Basically they have, I think if you watch the pre-race show, Bill Buxton I think explained them very nicely. Basically they're kind of like slightly pyramid shaped, and basically if you go over the edge of them, there's like a drop of almost like 3 to 5 centimeters depending on the corner. However, the cars are going over them and basically they're riding the curbs, and while they're doing this, there's a lot of vibration and movement between the tire and the curb, and there's a lot of concern about the tire wear of this. So basically depending on how things go with the results from sprint qualifying and from the sprint tomorrow, they may be implementing a maximum stint length for the main Grand Prix, and it would be a minimum 3-stop race, which probably not the best idea. Well, not the best idea in that it would not be the best result, I think, in terms of racing, but obviously safety does take priority, and I think it definitely means that Pirelli are going to have a lot of questions about, there's going to be a lot of questions directed at Pirelli about their tires, about why this happened. And I think also about the circuit as to why they chose these specific curves, and I think, what's going to happen going forward. But that basically was all before the session. So after our 10 minutes start, or basically 20-minute delay because of the practice session, we eventually got going. It's late afternoon, and with hotter track temp than yesterday in qualifying, because we were basically starting at the same time as FP1 yesterday. So everyone was out on medium tires. I've not seen why I don't think it was regulated. I guess it was just, this is how the teams decided to allocate their tires. Verstappen was fastest by 8/10. Lots of issues with track limits. On the first lap, on drivers' first laps alone, Sargent, Gasly, Leclerc, Zhou, Hamilton, and Perez all ran foul of track limits and had their laps deleted. So after the first run, the bottom 5 drivers were Sargent, Gasly, Stroll, Lawson, and Magnussen. So some of the drivers from here managed to set 2 laps in the time that I basically wrote that down. A lot of drivers suffering from oversteer, same issue as yesterday, and I think based on a couple of the team radio messages, I kind of figured that this is probably because of the wind and just sudden changes in the wind, because I know that F1 cars are very sensitive with all the aerodynamic devices on the car to wind. So if you have a slight change in the wind direction or intensity, that could completely change how the driver takes each corner from lap to lap, even if especially if there's a sudden gust of wind mid-corner, which is why you're seeing all these random snaps of oversteer, especially at certain corners like turn 5. Let's see, so Stroll, so Stroll caused yellow flags due to oversteer sector 1, and I've forgotten to write down the 5 drivers who are out, but they're right down here. Sargent, Magnussen, Tsunoda, Albon, and Stroll all knocked out in Q1. Tsunoda I believe was in the top 15, but had his lap time deleted due to track limits. So into Q2 we go. Drivers are out on the medium tires again. First laps, again, still drivers with issues with track limits. This time it's Hamilton, Leclerc, and Zhou. After the first runs, Lawson, Sainz, Leclerc, Zhou, and Bottas were your bottom 5 drivers. And Hamilton gets into the top 10 on his final run, but goes over track limits and gets his lap time deleted. So pretty uneventful Q2, but your bottom 5 are Zhou, Bottas, Lawson, Hamilton, and Gasly. Hamilton probably the surprise victim of Q2. So into Q3 we go. The drivers finally bring out the soft tires. Verstappen sets the benchmark with his first lap, 124.453, 3 purple sectors, but goes over track limits at turn 5. And they tried to show a replay of it, but every time they tried to show the replay, they just cut to another corner, car. So not sure what that was about, but nonetheless, pretty good lap, but did go over track limits. Right afterwards, Leclerc went over track limits as well at turn 5. Following lap, went over track limits again. So 2 laps in a row for Leclerc on top of doing it in Q2 and in Q1. Norris goes top with a 124.536, which is actually faster than Verstappen's deleted lap time. Perez gets track limits again, and like the TV announcers called it, he was so far over track limits you could basically see it in real time. Final runs, Verstappen only 3rd. I think that was a bit of a surprise. He was about like a 10th off of the McLarens, who at this point were 1st and 2nd. Piastri goes 1st, but then Norris looks like he's on a really good lap. Looks like he might take pole position for the sprint, but then makes a really big mistake at the final corner. Probably loses several tenths, half a tenth of a second, meaning that Piastri takes what effectively is a pole position. I don't think it's effectively classified as such. But anyway, first time being fastest in a qualifying session of 124.454, which is about a tenth faster than Verstappen's first run. It's likely that Verstappen, his second run Q3, probably didn't go 100%, knew that, probably left a bit of a margin for error just to make sure they had a lap time. And you know, he can, based on the race pace of the car, he can probably easily win the sprint from P3. But, you know, that's why we watch races. We'll see how it goes. Alonso went P5, but right after the session, he got his lap deleted for track limits. So let's go over the grid. First, Piastri, second, Norris, McLaren 1-2 for the sprint. Thus, I'm wearing McLaren. Third, Verstappen, still pretty decent session. Bit of a surprise given how dominant they were yesterday. I think it really showed that the McLarens had a lot of potential pace-wise yesterday. And I think both drivers kind of made mistakes, resulting in them starting further back. Fourth, Russell, again, pretty consistent, pretty good like yesterday. Fifth, Sainz, sixth, Leclerc, seventh, Hülkenberg, really big surprise to see Haas up there. But that being said, listening to his post-qualifying interview, he was pretty unhappy with his performance. Maybe he can get points if the Haases can get their tires to last until the end of the sprint, but I'm not crossing my fingers on that. 8th, Perez, probably quite disappointed with being out-qualified by Haas, but that being said, did get into Q3. 9th, Alonso, no lap time. 10th, Ocon, also no lap time. Both of their only lap times were deleted with track limits. 11th, Gasly, 12th, Hamilton, 13th, Lawson, pretty good result for him. Out-qualifying Tsunoda. 14th, 15th, the 2 Alfa Romeos, Bottas and Zhou. 16th, Stroll, big struggles again. Don't know if he took out his physiotherapist this time, but then again, hopefully his interview is better than his interview last night. 17th, Albon, 18th, Tsunoda, 19th, Magnussen, and 20th, Sargent, who I believe did not set a lap time. Both times were deleted. So, 3 big talking points, I think, coming out of qualifying. I think the big one, I think this was number 1, regardless of what happened in qualifying, and that, I think, is tires. I think because of the concerns that Pirelli have about the tires, I don't think anything has happened like this has happened, where they basically said that they might have to implement, basically mandate like a certain number of pit stops above the already mandated one. You know, this kind of brings back shades of 2005 Indy, and this is kind of why F1 really doesn't want to have multiple tire manufacturers. You can imagine a scenario where, you know, a rival tire manufacturer, Bridgestone, for example, are also in the sport. You know, 3 to 4 teams have Bridgestone tires, and, you know, their tires are fine. They can easily do a one-stopper, and how that would put the Pirelli teams at a massive disadvantage. So that's why we don't have tire wars anymore. But that being said, tires are going to be a really big talking point coming out of today. Number 2, I think, has to be McLaren. Excellent performance, 1-2 in qualifying. Can't remember the last time that happened. Probably you're going to have to go back to 2012, last time that happened in qualifying. They were very, very good that year in qualifying. Number 3, I think, let's see, big third big talking point. I don't want to write track limits again because I wrote that yesterday, but I think given what's at stake in the sprint, I'm going to write down Verstappen World Drivers' Championship. So of course, he has not claimed the World Championship yet, but his first mathematical opportunity is in the sprint in several hours' time. Of course, I think it's basically three points is a magic number, where I think he needs to get 3 points, or Perez needs to get less. Basically, he needs, 3 points more than Perez, something like that. Anyway, there's various permutations, but the reality is that Verstappen is basically a very, very good chance of getting the World Drivers' Championship in the sprint. So, of course, even though it's basically been a foregone conclusion since arguably preseason testing in the first race of the season, that's what we're all going to be waiting for and watching for in the sprint. So thank you so much for watching sprint quality review. I think definitely more eventful than I was expecting, and a bit of a shake-up in the grid order relative to yesterday, so that's always good. So we'll be back in a couple hours time with my review of the sprint. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.